Jeanne, it's just an absolute pleasure to be sitting and talking with you again. You know, over the years, you've just been one of those people that's really led the way for so many families and for so many professionals and others in terms of, you know, how it is that people can work effectively and positively together. So maybe just start out, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to over the last few years.
The last few years I've been working with Carlo Rossi on the Independent Child Advocate Program. It's a county-wide early dispute resolution, you know, pre-mediation, sort of ombudsman, a lot of education and negotiation, and we get to go to school sites, do observations of classrooms, interact with all kinds of educators and families.
What a team, too. Carlo Rossi's also been a longtime friend of Cadre, and so I imagine the two of you are just absolutely fabulous with that work.
It's a lot of fun.
So, you know, as you think about years of working in special education dispute resolution, are there sort of nuggets or kernels of truth? I mean, what's the sort of enduring messages that you would offer to people about working things out?
Include the student, include the youth, include the family. Yeah.
And thinking about including the youth, what are the opportunities there, and are there challenges or cautions? Or?
I don't think there's ever a time that it's too early to bring a student to an IEP, an individualized education planning meeting, and I had the opportunity to raise 2 children with significant learning disabilities, and the first one I learned how to do it, and the second one we sailed and sang with it. And with my younger, the only IEP he missed during his school career was the one in middle school where he hadn't done his homework and he didn't want to talk about it. You know? So that piece about his own shame about not holding up his part of the deal was, you know, I said, okay, fine. It's very clear, and you're letting everybody know that that's why you don't want to come this time. And we talked about his program and what he did want. And the other times, the adults were well behaved. They knew that we were going to participate as a family. He was well informed. We went over his test results ahead of time. He always measured himself against himself. So even in his classroom, when they were an early adopter of response to instruction, all his little data points were on the bulletin board with everybody else's. And he only ever looked, he said, look, I've gone up 5 points. Yes! You know? So that was the positive side of it. If the adults are not getting along well together, or if there's contention around compliance or other non-student issues, I don't advise students to be there. They don't need to see us grinding on each other. And
have you felt like involving the student has in any way inhibited the discussion, or people?
I think people are more diplomatic. Again, some of these IEP meetings are difficult conversations. We're talking about deficits, and you have to be pretty skilled to do that with a student in a way that brings their strengths into the conversation.
And so the presence of the student actually functions in a way to support people in bringing out the best, rather than sort of governing people and restricting them in a way that doesn't get to really the hard questions and the tough content.
And a lot of times the students will be very, very, very direct. You know, if you want to get right to the point, bring a student in. I mean, I had a student who developed his own goals and what he thought he needed to work on, and this was a youth with terrific language issues. And for him to write down a list of the 5 things that he wanted to be doing over the next year, it brought the team to tears. You know.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as you think about hundreds of families that you've served as a trusted advisor to, are there kernels, sort of nuggets of wisdom? Are there? I mean, what's your real go-to universal?
Our kids are different. They know it, we know it, the world can see it. How do we give them the understanding of that so that they can be successful.
So as you think about having worked with scores, even hundreds of families, there are some truths or some pieces of advice that you find yourself more frequently giving because they bring so much power to the discussion. What would some of those be?
And one of the first ones for me is that our children are not often on the fast track. And there's such a tremendous pressure, especially when we can go on the internet and see all this stuff that if we do it right now, it's going to fix everything. And they call it developmental differences for a reason. And we have time. I think one of the things that I hear, oh my gosh, the window is only this big, and if we don't do all this intensive services now, it's just going to not, we're going to lose, it's not going to, and it is. We do have time. We're creating a strong foundation. We're doing the needful things, and our children do grow and mature and grow into themselves, but it does take time. And to be able to kind of relax into that and enjoy them and have fun at the same time, that's a real critical piece for me as a family member. As an advocate, it's, learn the language, learn the acronym soup, be a part of the team. You are, as a family, hold the essential information. Be part of the school. I think sometimes it's very challenging for folks that have a lot going on with their special needs children to engage fully in the school system. And now there are a lot more opportunities for that. And I think a lot more awareness on the administrative side of the value of bringing in our very diverse families.
Yeah, I think your advice about sort of expectations is so important. On the one hand, you don't want to be sort of hyper-accelerated and frustrated in every moment. And on the other hand, there's an expression I've always liked, the tyranny of low expectations.
Yes.
And so how it is that you find that sweet spot that really is appropriately motivational and that doesn't set arbitrary limits, that that you're able to live in your skin and your child. And I mean, it's a very interesting.
It's a challenging dynamic. It's like, okay, your child doesn't read and there's reading time every night. What do? Do you have family story time? Do you do comic books? Do you do the TV adaptation of your favorite book? There's access is there, especially now. There's much more of it. And it's like, how do we frame those strength building activities? Go forward that way.
So our families, for a variety of reasons, will sometimes find themselves headed into what are going to be some very difficult and uncomfortable meetings. And it really, as advocates, as supporters, trying to do our best to prepare families to participate effectively in those meetings. Do you have thoughts about how families can be most effective and prepare for a challenging, difficult meeting?
Well, the first thing I want to say is keep it simple, which is impossible. But that doing your own report. Do your own report. Here's what I think my child does really well. Here's what he really enjoys. Here's where she shines, and her social life is amazing. And if you think of yourself as another assessment that comes to the table, and be prepared to talk to those strengths and challenges that you see, and then to make the time to really thoroughly review the material ahead of time so that you're comfortable and understand what the roles of all those 12 other people at the table are going to be, and have a familiarity with what your IEP process is. Avail yourself of your Parent Training and Information Center and be comfortable with the framework of what the process requires. And if you understand they're asking these questions not because they want to invade your privacy or because they really want to know, but because they have to fill out the forms correctly, then you can kind of relax and go, okay, now we've got the forms filled out, let's talk.
So related to that, you've had a variety of experiences going into schools, some that have been particularly good and some that haven't.
Right.
Is there, if you were going to talk to, as you are right now.
Hello, world.
As you talk to educators who are really interested in, what is it that they can do that in terms of meetings and how it is that they interact with families that's likely to produce the most productive engagement. Do you have advice?
I've got a long list.
Oh, go for the gusto.
I mean, the first one is listen. And then listen some more. And ask those questions that engage the family. Help them feel comfortable. Understand what couple things you can do to make it safe. Mm-hmm. Don't sit in the kindergarten chairs. Sit in the grown-up chairs. The setting kinds of things. There's a lot of rubrics on how to set up a pleasant IEP, but the most fundamental one is treat your family with respect. Provide them with your draft goals. Provide them with your assessment reports. Provide them with your speech language reports ahead of time so that they really have an opportunity to read and review that material, to understand it, and to get back with you and ask questions. Because if you're having a conversation ahead of time about the checkoff list, the things that we have to do to make this a compliant IEP, then we can use the time together as a team to actually talk about this particular student and do a program for that student. You're not reading reports, you're not going through assessment information, you're not doing the disciplinary things, you're not counting your college credit or your graduation credit. You're saying, here's where we are. We've had a chance to talk about this ahead of time. We've done the due diligence piece. Now let's talk about this student. Where are we? Where do we want to be? The other piece of that is if you have a great rapport with the parent, you can be the purveyor of that information to your team. There's nothing more frustrating to a parent than identifying a critical issue, communicating it to somebody at the school, and then finding out that it didn't go anywhere. It's like, wait, I told you. Well, you might have told the resource teacher at the bus line, and it needed to be the principal. So if you're at a school site and you got a piece of critical information, share it with your team and share it often. That kind of sense that everybody is talking with each other and there is a team around the student will really build that relationship for the family.
Well, it's funny, as I listen to you, I think about Ann Turnbull did a webinar for us, and she said something that I thought was really was profound about how schools need to understand how terribly, terribly important an IEP meeting is for a parent, and that somewhere in the back of many parents' minds there's this, when there's a disagreement, there's this churn that's saying that I hope that 10 years from now I don't look back on a decision to go along and feel like when I went along I profoundly diminished the sorts of opportunities my child would have. And it just, I think attaching that, just the extraordinary importance of every one of those meetings.
Yep. And that may be the only time that a parent knows that there's an adaptive PE teacher on campus. And that person is really monitoring a lot of physical well-being. And there's a huge number of things the family at home can do if they have that information and can build on that. So,
Jeannie, is there something that I haven't asked you that you'd love to say? I've always really appreciated how much fun you've brought to the work. I mean, at Cadre, we've loved what you've had to say, and we've also loved kind of the spirit and sense of...
You didn't just ask me that.
The spirit and sense of humor. I'm not asking you to tell a
Marshall.
joke. But is there,
I want to tell you what my two sons have told me, and some of this will date our experience, but I actually do see still that there are low expectations and paternalistic attitudes at some school sites, and particularly with our students with cognitive impairments, that there has been this kind of what my son referred to as the silly mommy attitude. Oh, you'll just be fine, and he said that never helped him, and again, that's, as you said, that balance between that fine line between reasonable expectations and strengths and building, but that don't do it for a student. Do what enables the student. Let them make mistakes. Let them have challenges, but let them be a real, full human being.
That's a lovely note to finish on. Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Jeanne, and again, thank you for all of the ways that you've advanced our profession and all of your good work. It's always a real treat talking with you. So
Thanks,
thank you
Marshall.
very much.